Wholesale is over an $11 trillion industry, but most product makers are treating it like an advanced strategy. Meanwhile, my students are landing wholesale accounts in weeks, getting accepted to fair instantly, and seeing reorders within 30 days. And many of them started with no retail background, zero connections, and no fancy retail pitch decks. They just followed my clear system. She Sells Wholesale is opening soon, and if you want consistent revenue that doesn't depend on markets or social media algorithms, get on the wait list. Let's turn your product into consistent, repeatable revenue. What if the reason that you're exhausted in your business isn't because you're not doing enough, but because you're doing too much of the wrong stuff? In this week's episode, we're talking about something that sounds almost impossible: building a six-figure business in 20 hours a week, especially if you're a busy mom, or honestly, just a busy human with a full life and a business dream that you're trying to protect. But here's what I love about this conversation. We're not just talking about some work less motivation. We're getting into the real strategy behind it. How do you simplify? Where is your time leaking? And what actually moves the needle when you don't have unlimited hours to throw at your business? My guest today is Gillian Perkins, and she's the CEO of Startup Society, the host of the Work Less, Earn More podcast, and the creator behind the 700,000 subscriber Gillian Perkins YouTube channel. Gillian teaches people how to start and build profitable online businesses that create passive income and flexible lifestyles. And she's walking proof that you don't have to hustle 24/7 to build something that lasts. So if you've ever thought, there's no way I can grow a business without burning out, stay with me today, because Gillian shares one mindset shift that can really change how you see your time, and one ruthlessly simple move that could be the thing that finally makes your business feel lighter and more profitable. Let's get into it. Hi, friends. Welcome to She Sells Differently, the show for aspiring women entrepreneurs looking to overcome the fear of selling and grow thriving businesses from a place of authenticity and confidence. I'm Andee Hart, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I knew in my heart that I was called to use my gifts for something more, something different. That's exactly why I created the She Sells Differently podcast. Each episode is going to deliver you business strategies, tools, and mindset shifts to help set you and your brand apart from our culture's expectations. It's time to elevate your sales and build a profitable, sustainable business you're proud of, one built on integrity, grace, and humility. It's time to learn how to sell differently. Hi, Gillian. Thanks so much for joining the She Sells Differently podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into this.
Yes, I am excited too, because this topic today that we are going to dive into is one that so many of my listeners are going to resonate with, because we're going to be talking about building a six-figure business in 20 hours a week as a busy mom. And even if you're not a mom, we're all busy. And so you could really probably fill in the blank with whatever there. But so many are going to resonate with that. And so I would love to just start by introducing yourself, of how you got to be where you are today in your business and what exactly you do.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. It's one of my favorite topics too, and I agree. Whether the listeners are moms or not themselves, I mean, if they aren't, then it's just going to be that much easier for them. But they can still use all these same strategies, right?
Right.
So today, what I do is I run a business called Startup Society, where I teach people basically like how to start their own business, work for themselves online. I also work with people who have online businesses to scale their businesses up to six figures. But how I got here was quite kind of a bumpy road, a lot of trial by error, I would say. I first got interested in online business way back in roughly 2012. So I guess about 14 years ago. And at the time, I was running a local business. I'd been doing it for a few years and I had kind of gotten started on that accidentally. I hadn't really been trying to start a business, but I was a music student myself. I played piano and flute. And I just had people start asking me for music lessons. And at first I said no. And then some of them were really insistent, said, I really need help. And so I finally kind of gave in, more like they actually just started showing up at my house sometimes and being like, please help me. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll try, but like no promises at all. And it ended up turning into a really successful local business, one of the biggest music studios in the Northwest. And I ended up like hiring teachers to work under me, and we had a couple hundred students at any given time. So it turned into a full fledged business. Along the way, through like the years of running that business, I was starting a new side hustle like every year or so because I knew that I didn't want to be a music teacher as like my career. That wasn't the career I'd ever had in mind. As much as I do enjoy music, and I was enjoying teaching, it wasn't my dream, right? It was just something that had been kind of thrust upon me, and also I didn't love a lot of the aspects of running a local business, what with overhead and whatnot. I just found it a little bit stressful and mostly a little bit kind of like constricting. I had to be at a certain place at certain times. I felt like I couldn't go on a trip or anything like that. I was really tied down by the business. So I was starting all these side hustles, all sorts of different things, everything from some different real estate investment related side hustles to starting some like various other like small local businesses. And after several years of doing that, and I was thinking the whole time that I was trying to figure out like what I wanted my career to be, I finally realized that yes, that was part of it, but a bigger part was actually that I really enjoy starting businesses and I find the process really interesting. And I also really love marketing and sales psychology. And so those were things that I was reading a lot about and enjoying applying with these new businesses. So, of course, along the way, I learned a lot about starting businesses. And the main thing whenever you start a new business is how do you get the first customers? So, that was something I
Mhm.
had to do over and over again. So, I kind of got that down pat. So, eventually, back in about 2017, I had started an online business because I kind of saw the potential there and I saw the potential benefits of more flexibility, of lower overhead, those sorts of things. Um, and I initially was doing digital marketing for people. It was something that started locally, actually. Some of my local business peers started asking me for help with their marketing, asking me like to run Facebook ads for them or to set up a website, because those were things I had experimented with. And then I ended up taking up on some clients online. Well, I pretty quickly realized that as much as I love marketing, and I truly do, I did not love working with clients in that capacity, which was kind of strange to me. It took me a while to figure this out because I had clients at the music school and I didn't mind working with clients in that capacity. But in retrospect, what was going on was I loved teaching and I didn't love kind of like service client work. I really love helping people have the tools to do things for themselves. And I think part of that is because I'm the sort of person who I love doing things for myself. And I love learning through experience. So after not too long of running that small digital marketing agency, I ended up making a big pivot to still talk about the same topics and kind of focus on the same topic with the business, but instead teach people how to do the marketing themselves. And that just immediately felt so much more like aligned and I don't know, just satisfying to me. I enjoyed the work a lot more. And kind of the rest is history. In 2018, well, the end of 2017, I started a YouTube channel to promote that business. And so I made videos about marketing and online business, and it took off so quickly. There's some backstory there too. I had a prior YouTube channel that really had struggled to grow at all. I had no idea what I was doing. And I love YouTube. I really enjoy watching YouTube. It's like my favorite social media platform, favorite really media platform at all. I've never been like a big TV watcher or anything, but yeah, really enjoy YouTube. So when that first YouTube channel was really struggling and I ended up shutting it down, we can get into that later if you want. There's a whole saga there. But um, I was fascinated by what sets some YouTube channels apart from others. Like, why did some succeed while others struggled to grow? So, I had spent like about 18 months or so really diving deep into the YouTube algorithm to try to figure out what that secret sauce was essentially. And so when I started the new YouTube channel to promote my digital marketing agency that was turning into an educational business, I knew a lot about the algorithm at that point, and so it really was very push button, and I had 1,000 subscribers just 3 months later. By the end of the year, I had 55,000, and it has just continued to grow since then. We're up to, like, well over 700,000 now. So, that's been a big, like, driver in my business in terms of, like, generating leads and whatnot. And along the way, like after 2018, especially, I've launched like multiple different group coaching programs and most importantly, I guess, the membership that bears the same name as the business, which is Startup Society, where we help like new online entrepreneurs to get their businesses off the ground and growing.
I love this because I bet so many people are listening to your story and they are also, we hear the word serial entrepreneur because I have my hands in a lot of things as well. I have a candle company, I have a coaching business. I also have some real estate as well. And one of the things, that we're really diving into is the time element. So building a
Mhm.
six-figure business in 20 hours a week. And I would love to hear, especially as, one of the elements that we talk like all I feel like all entrepreneurs have is just that creative mind. You're
Mhm.
kind of always coming up with these ideas. Um and as you are, you have 6 kids, I believe.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and you're homeschooling them, and so,
Mhm.
there's obviously some boundaries that you have to have. So, what was kind of the pivot point for you of, "I have this passion for entrepreneurship and all of these creative ideas, but I also can't spend all of my time, working on them, so I have to have these boundaries." What was kind of that pivot point for you?
Well, I'll start by saying that I have never worked more than I worked when my business wasn't making hardly any money. So there is definitely is not a correlation between like working more to earn more. That was something that took me a while to wrap my head around because I know that when my business did start to be successful, one of my kind of like mindset challenges, people talk sometimes about like a fear of success. And
Mm,
I did never like I couldn't wrap my mind around that. I was like, fear of success? Like, what are people talking about? I'm not afraid of succeeding at all. But in retrospect, what I realized is I did have a version of that, which was that I thought I'm earning X number of dollars right now, working this many hours per week. I want to earn 10 times this much money. I don't want to work 10 times as much. And
yeah,
I had this like underlying belief that I would have to, and that sounded terrible even though I like what I do. That's still it sounded like I was never gonna sleep, like I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be. And so I do think that held me back a little bit, especially in terms of kind of creative thinking about different business models and how I could structure my business differently to get different results. But thankfully I did keep experimenting at least, even though I didn't know the way. I kept just trying different things. And what I've seen is that there's not like a direct correlation where if I work less, my business makes more, but the two things just they're not coupled. I
yeah.
can work more and earn more sometimes, and I can also work more and earn less, or vice versa. It really depends on what you're doing and the strategy behind it and how well you do it so much more than how much time that you actually work on your business.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I want to dive into that a little bit more because you use the words fear of success. And I think we hear that. And my reaction to it is probably the same as yours of like, oh, I don't fear of success. But I was just having this conversation, I believe it was 2 days ago, with one of my good friends. And she said to me, she's also an entrepreneur, and she said that I think we all often have the mindset that making money shouldn't be this easy.
Mm.
So,
I've
you know,
definitely experienced that.
yeah, and so I think, when we land upon, a simple strategy that is easy and repeatable, and we're not having to work too hard at it because we are and something you said earlier really kind of resonated. We're kind of in our sweet spot where it's like that mix of our God-given gifts and what we're passionate about and our experience, and it comes naturally. It's like we hold ourselves back with these limiting beliefs of like, "Well, it shouldn't be this easy to make money."
Mhm.
And
What
that's
that tends
yeah.
to bring up for me is not so much of like a fear of success, or I don't know, doubting myself there. It's almost the opposite, where it makes me scared that I'm going to lose everything sometimes,
Mhm.
because it's like it can't be this easy. If it's this easy, then like it must be an accident, basically. It's
Yes.
not supposed to be this way. And so it surely, things are going to revert to how they really should be, which is for making money to be a hard work. Which on the flip side, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, there are other times when I can't make money to save my life, or, at least that's happened in the past, whereas like, why is making money so hard? Like everything I try, nothing's working. And so that can make it be difficult to feel, I guess, like you're in control sometimes. So
Yeah.
I just encourage anybody who's experiencing either of those things to just like keep showing up and keep experimenting with different things, especially if it feels like nothing's working right now. A lot of the time, it ends up being a small shift that makes all the difference.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can be doing like 9 out of 10 things excellently, but then there's one thing that's essentially like a missing puzzle piece or a missing ingredient, and so it becomes like that bottleneck or that limiting factor that makes it so you're not getting any results overall, or you're getting very small results overall. And it can be tough to find that thing. But for me, I remember it was back actually in 2017, when I was trying to make that shift to having more of like a teaching business instead of a service business. And to have a teaching business, you generally need to have an audience of some sort. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be big enough.
Mhm.
And but I wasn't really focused on that. I was just focused on trying to sell educational products, like online courses and things like that, instead of just services. And I could sell the services, but I couldn't sell the online courses. And I was like, why isn't this working? I really want to help people in this way. And then I went to a small business conference, and there was just some training there on like basically sales funnel strategy. And I'm sure there were lots of great nuggets there, but there was one thing that stood out to me, and that was that the funnel needed like traffic going into the top of it. And somehow my old business, it just hadn't really functioned in that way. Like technically, yes, there was traffic coming into the top of it, but I hadn't focused on like an advertising aspect so much as like word of mouth, or I don't know. The marketing was just a little bit more direct. It was just like I would market to get a lead immediately, not market to grow an audience. And
Yes.
so I didn't realize that with this new business model that I had to market to get an audience and then warm up a fraction
Mhm.
of them and convert a fraction of them into paying customers. So that was my missing puzzle piece. And I don't share that to say like, maybe, if you're listening to this right now and you're stuck, maybe that's the part you're missing. I mean, maybe, but the my point is just that it was that one thing. I was doing so many other things so well, but that one thing was making my business like not make any money, at least with like the new business model that I was trying to adopt.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just that one thing that you're just like a light bulb moment. you know?
Yes, and that's exactly how it
So
was for me. In fact, I came back from that conference, I'd been working on my online business most of 40 hours a week for months and months and months, and I came back from that conference, I'd had that light bulb moment. I didn't hardly work on my business for a little over 2 weeks after that because I now wasn't, like, struggling with the problem, it wasn't a mystery to me anymore, I was like, "I can see exactly what I need to do." So it, like, took
yeah,
that mystery, that allure out of it for me. So it was about 2, 3 weeks of kind of just sitting around kind of feeling content about it, like, "I don't really need to work on this, like, I have the
yeah,
answer." And then eventually I was like, "Well, let's try it out. Let's see what we can make happen if we put this
yeah.
to into practice." And my business, like, just took off from there.
That's so interesting. It's kind of funny because one of my next questions, and I love to ask this question, especially as we talk about the time element, working less. And you really just kind of answered it, but I think it's worth like just reframing this question because, um, first, I'll say this. My word for my year has been simple because
Mhm.
I'm the type that, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, right? I can overcomplicate things with the intent of making them better, but I just make them worse, right? And
Mm.
so, my question was, what really had to become ruthlessly simple in your business for you to be able to work less? And I wanted to repeat that question because I think and maybe you have another answer to it too, but I think you just nailed it of like you saw something so simple and easy. And I think a lot of us, a lot of my listeners may just have not had that light bulb moment yet, but it's
Yeah.
really just something simple, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I do have something to add though. What I have found is that generally it's far, and this is like no new information. Most people have thought about this before, but it's far easier to get bigger, better results doing fewer things than doing more things, right?
Yes.
And specifically, if you limit it down to just one thing, then you don't have like the distractions of other things. So you can not just give like the energy that you would have given to those other things. It's not like instead of your energy being divided between 3 things, now you have 3 times the energy on one thing. I find that it's more than just the 3 times
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
now it's like the single focus. You have a lot more energy to give, more focus to give. And so before I had that light bulb moment, I was marketing. But like I said, I had kind of, this different marketing strategy, if you will. I was trying to market to get customers instead of market to get audience members or leads in the first place. And but my previous marketing strategy had been kind of like an everywhere strategy, trying to be everywhere.
Mhm.
So I was posting on several different platforms. I was writing blog posts, but mostly it was like a lot of short form social media, so Facebook and Instagram and X, and also trying to figure out Pinterest and LinkedIn, all the different things. And when I had this epiphany that I needed to focus on growing my audience instead, I chose a platform. I chose YouTube because I could see the potential there because of my previous experience with YouTube for getting just that exposure, getting that visibility. And I decided to throw all the rest of the things away and only do YouTube for at least 3 months. I wasn't going to
Mhm.
commit for forever, but I was like, at least 3 months. Let's just go all in on YouTube and see what happens. And it wasn't just that, like, YouTube is amazing. That's not, like, the moral of the story. The moral of the story is that by focusing on one thing, I was able to create exponential results there. I've seen
Yeah.
similarly with product offers, and I've never gotten all the way down to one, but when I was first trying to create, like, educational products and sell them, I created more and more and more to the point where I had a couple dozen different offers, and I realized that that was spreading me too thin. It was too difficult to try to market all those different things, too difficult to create traction with all of them or momentum with them. And so I've really worked over the years to pare it down. And for several years now, I've sold just about 4 different products kind of seasonally. And that's worked really well for me. And it might work even better if I did pare it all the way down to just one. I've never been able to quite bring myself to do that because I have a rather wide audience that needs, like, different people in it need different things. And so I know if I was to retire any of those 4 products that I currently sell, I would have a huge chunk of my audience that'd be like, "But I needed that, I wanted that," sort of
Yeah.
thing. And so I mostly keep them not because I think that it necessarily makes my business more successful, but because I am in business to support other entrepreneurs, and so I really want to make those keep those products available for them.
Yes. I love that. That's something that I've been working to as well on my coaching business, and also something that I teach to my audience, which is mostly product makers.
Hmm.
Um, one of the biggest challenges I see and one of the biggest mistakes I see, because I made it when I first started at my candle company, was you see all these, beautiful things that you want to create, all these different types of candles, and whether you're making, candles or jewelry or art or whatever, fill in the blank. But you want to fill your product portfolio with all these lovely things. But at the end of the day, when you're presenting that to a customer, it can be overwhelming. And I always say a confused mind says no.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so
Uh-huh.
not to mention, but to carry all of the supplies and, inventory to be able to make
Yeah.
and produce all of that portfolio. And so that's one of the first things that I work with my clients on is simplifying their portfolio. You don't have to make, 30 different fragrances, 6. 6 is fine. And so I love that, even just translating that from service, or coaching to product based, it's really the same thing. And you can
Uh-huh.
really excel at creating one thing really, really well. So, yeah. So, what boundaries? I would love to talk about boundaries because I think that this is something that we don't talk about enough in business. What boundaries have you really had to fiercely protect as you have grown your business, and especially being a homeschool mom? And I would love to hear you talk about, you know, if they have cost you anything, but what has that cost you in the short term, and how has that paid off?
Mm, mhm. Well, I would say that I have one main boundary, and maybe there are others that I haven't thought about as much as boundaries, but the one main one is that I set a boundary quite a few years ago to work 20 hours a week. It was at a time when I was working a bit more than that. In the early stages, like I said, of my business, when I wasn't successful yet, that was when I was working the most. And I was working both for my local business, about 35 to 40 hours a week, and then also on the online business, 30 to 40 hours a week. So it was quite an intense work week. And I did already have 2 kids at that point. Well, I mean, first I had the local business, then I had my first baby, had the second baby, then I started the online business, just to kind of be clear about how that worked out. And so that was the point where I felt like this is not sustainable, right? But I felt like I was so close to a breakthrough with the online business, and the online business was quite a hobby of interest of mine, even though I was trying to have it not be a hobby. I just mean it was like a topic of interest. So it was what I did
Mhm.
with my free time. And I think, that's fine for a season for sure. But once the online business did become successful, I still was working on it. I would say an unsustainable amount, at least as long as I also had the local business. So I was still working 30 plus hours a week online. And it was too much with the little kids. So I decided, I need to cut back. I'm going to cut back to 4 to 5 hours a day. So it's like 20 to 25 hours, and I'm just going to do as much with the online business in that amount of time per week as I can. And after a year or so of that, I ended up selling the local business. So now I was only doing the online business, which was way more comfortable. And that was the point where I was like, this is good. Like working 20 to 25 hours a week, that is sustainable. That is an amount of time that still allows me to be the mom I want to be. And the business was growing really well at that time period. So it was very kind of like encouraging. It gave me the peace of mind I think that I needed to be able to see what was possible while working as little as I was. So that was really good for me. Now I do think you talked about like what has this cost me, and I do think that in terms of growing my business, it has put to some degree some sort of like cap or limitation on how much I can grow my business or how quickly. I see a lot of my peers in online business who don't have kids or aren't even married at all, and they just work all the time. And they do create a lot more than I am able to, and sometimes accomplish bigger things than I am able to in my quite limited work hours. But I think that the trade off is well worth it because, at the end of the day, like what really matters, I think it is the relationships. I think it is being there for my kids. And so it's a sacrifice that I honestly am happy to make, not just like a sacrifice for them, but a sacrifice like for myself. Like I think it's a good trade off, especially long term.
Yes, 100%. I agree. How did you make that decision when you set that boundary and you said, I'm going to, only work for 20 hours? How do you make the decision what gets eliminated or what
Mm.
you automate or what you're going to push down the road?
Hmm. Well, something that helped me a lot, and I know that this won't be the right move for everyone, at least not right now, but it was that I brought an operations manager into my business. And so at this point in time, I had a very small team. I had tried hiring a couple virtual assistants, and I'd really felt like it had ended up costing me as much time as it saved
Mm,
me. Like they were doing some jobs for me, but also I was just spending time managing them. And of course, it cost money also. So it wasn't really worth the trade off. Then I hired a video editor. That worked a lot better. I think because the job was a lot like more specific and was kind of a more like skilled job. That's not quite the right words to use, but like a video editor who I hired to be a video editor, he knew how to edit videos already. I didn't need to be like telling him
yes.
how to do it, if that makes sense. So,
Yes.
like I hired a skilled professional to do a specific job. So that worked out a lot better and also saved me a lot of time. So that was great. But that was the only, well, I guess I also had a virtual assistant working for me at the time that I hired my ops manager. But so it wasn't like I hired her to manage a team. I really hired her to manage me. I wanted her to like be my boss basically, and it worked out really well. I wanted her to do the things that I am weak at. I had read this book. I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's called Rocket Fuel. And it's about like the two different types of entrepreneurs or leaders. There's like the visionary entrepreneur, and then you also have like they call it in the book the integrator, but more of like the admin type entrepreneur or
Mhm.
leader. And I saw myself in that specifically as like I'm a visionary. I have a lot of ideas. I charge forward. I try new things. I'm not so good at like keeping everything orderly behind me, or like keeping a tidy house, I guess. When it comes to my
Yeah.
business, I kind of like charge forward and make a mess. And I was like, I need help with this area of my business. I need somebody to help me keep my messes, like help me clean up my messes, help keep things organized, help me follow through on deadlines and that sort of thing. And so I made what I think a lot of people would have considered a bad business decision to hire something that I wasn't ready for, but I could just tell that it was exactly what I needed. And it really was one of the best business decisions that I ever made. So I had already probably made the decision to cut back on my working hours, but having that ops manager in my business, she really helped me to. mm, I guess to make the hard decisions about like, okay, if you're only working this much, then you can only get this many things done each week, each month. So like what's on the chopping block? Like we're gonna like fill up your calendar essentially or fill up your to-do list. Only so much can fit. Everything else is gonna like fall to the chopping block floor. That's not the right expression, but I think you know what I mean. Get
Yeah.
chopped off, fall on the floor. And she didn't, say it like that, but she was just being very realistic about what could fit and what couldn't. And it made me like it forced me to make those hard decisions.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I had the very same experience. And early on, I hired, because I think everyone hears that, hire a virtual assistant. And I learned early on, I don't need a virtual assistant. I need a skilled professional, I think is the word
Hmm.
you used. And that was one of the best decisions that I made. But I also think that's probably like my next step is someone that will manage me, is not afraid to push back. And so I love that you outlined that because, it's not everyone needs the same next hire as what we're all told. So,
Yeah. People talk about that concept of like a work wife. And lately I've been saying my business manager or my ops manager, she's basically like my work mom. I needed a work
yeah.
mom.
Yeah. I've always worked best with people that, any manager that I had in corporate or peer that I was, worked closely with, that they were not afraid to push back on me and challenge me
Mhm.
and make me better.
Mhm.
Because I'm not,
Absolutely, yeah. I
yeah,
always say I like hiring bossy people, and
yeah,
especially with that role, I was absolutely looking to hire a bossy person, like, somebody who would tell me what they really thought, tell me what they really thought I should do,
yeah,
like, give me firm advice, and of course, at the end of the day, we're always free to follow the advice or not,
yes,
but I wanted, like, a confident recommendation, not just somebody who was, like, taking orders from me.
yes, 100%. I love that. So, as we are kind of starting to wrap up, I love asking just this question too, because, one of the reasons I named my podcast and my business She Sells Differently is because I want to be countercultural to, culture tells us we should all be selling this way and, doing business a certain way. And so, is there any advice out there that you've heard about scaling to six figures that you just disagree with? Or it could just be any kind of business advice that you disagree with.
Hmm. Well, I think that it would have to be, and I think collectively, a lot of us have moved past this already, but I still see it for sure, and that is kind of that hustle mentality,
Mm,
which I think was first kind of like glorified, popularized by Gary Vee back in the day. I remember when I first heard about Gary Vee and I came to his website, he had this video that was called Hustle, and it was all about like if you want something, you need to work like literally 24/7 for it. Every waking moment you should be dedicated to it, like eat, breathe, sleep it. And I was just like, wow, that was the first time I heard about like hustle culture, like from the man himself
yeah.
basically. I was like, wow, that's intense. And so what I think is interesting, and this I think is kind of similar to like diet culture where people like in name rejected diet culture and rejected like that skinny is the best or something like that,
Mhm.
but in practice everybody still like thought that if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it comes to like hustle culture, people in name reject it, and yet I still see so many people who even who are calling out hustle culture and still are hustling.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
those people who like maybe they're not calling it out, but they're just like, wow, you can run an online business and it can be so easy and you can be so successful. And they make it like look so easy with like the pictures of them working on the beach and that sort of thing. But I know some of those people and I know that they work like 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so I just want everybody to know you actually can do it in a lot less time. You just have to be more strategic. You have to, I think you have to put that boundary in place actually and say, I'm not going to work more than this number of hours because that forces you to be more creative and to figure out like what that 80/20 is of like the 20% that's going to have the biggest impact on your business and to not do all the busy work or all of the maybe not busy work, maybe work that will get you results, but comes at that significant cost of having a social life or being there for your kids or going to the gym or whatever it is that you actually want to do with your life, not just work.
Yeah. Yeah. So if there is a mom out there that's listening and she has this dream and this business that she's holding closely, and I will be the first to say, even though I am not a mom, I see my friends that are. And sisters, y'all have the hardest job in the world. And the Lord has gifted you with a huge responsibility. And so, for those moms that are out there, or just anyone listening that is just feels busy, but they are thinking, I want to build this business. And what would you tell them, that mom that's working 24/7? What is the first realistic step look like for them to start building their business?
Mhm. Well, one thing I think is that, if this is something that you really care about, that you have a passion for, that's important to you, then I would encourage you to consider kind of making starting your business your hobby. So instead of seeing it as work that, you don't really have time for and also relaxing, see if you can maybe make it the thing that you do to relax,
Mm,
for a season at least, where it's like the fun thing that you do after you put the kids to bed instead of like doing what I think culture often tells us is self care or taking care of ourselves or relaxing, like taking a bubble bath or reading a book. I actually really enjoy working on my business. And so I like to, in the evenings, I've been with my kids, like being present with them, maybe all day. Maybe I've taken a break to work, but I've mostly been momming all day. So I get to the end of my day, put them to bed, and I pull out my laptop, not because like, I don't know, I already worked my one job of being a mom. Now I'm going to work my other job, but
yeah.
because it's something I enjoy doing. So I would consider that mindset shift. And
Mhm.
then on like a very practical level that goes along with that is I think it's God's grace that kids sleep more than adults, right? It means that we get some time off or we get time to work on our hobbies or passion projects. And so if you need to sleep, please sleep. If you need a nap, take the nap. But if you need like more of like a mental refresh, try working on an online business or try, whatever your goal is. Try working on your goal in that time. And I think you'll actually find it's a lot more fulfilling and satisfying than taking that bubble bath or reading a novel.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I love the mindset shift too, because I think sometimes that is so overlooked. And sometimes working on something that you're passionate about is so relaxing and exciting and, can be, um, so it is self care. It is self care.
I think
So,
so, and I think it's so
yeah.
much more satisfying than just kind of wasting time, and there certainly is a time and a place also for the bubble bath, like, don't hear
Yes.
me wrong, do take the bubble bath, do go on the hike or whatever it is, but relaxing or resting doesn't have to just be, taking the nap or taking the bubble bath, it also can be working on something that you're excited about.
Yes, for sure. So before we wrap up, I would love if there's anything else that you would like to add and also, just tell my listeners where they can find you if they would like to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find me pretty much anywhere just with my name, Gillian Perkins. So you can go to gillianperkins.com and find everything there, or you can look me up on YouTube. Just type in Gillian Perkins. And then if you specifically are interested in YouTube strategy, if you're like, this YouTube thing, it sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I'd like to give that a try. You can go to creatorfasttrack.com. That's where we run our YouTube program. And there's a free masterclass there you can watch that kind of gives you all the basics of how the YouTube algorithm works and how you can work with it to grow your channel really quickly. And then also, if you're interested in just finding out more about how to start a digital product online business, consider going to startupsociety.com where you can learn more about the very affordable program that we run there, where we teach people how to start their own successful, profitable online businesses.
Awesome. And we will put links to all of that in the show notes. I'm super excited to dive into the YouTube because right before we started recording, I was literally just telling Gillian that I was really terrible about YouTube. So I'm one of those that needs the help. So, yeah.
It can
Well,
be a
this
game
is,
changer.
yeah, for sure. I've done great on podcasts, but I don't use them for YouTube. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining. This has been amazing, and I am so excited for my listeners to get to experience this. So I appreciate you joining us. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of She Sells Differently. Friends, it would be a huge blessing to me if you would take 2 seconds to rate and subscribe to my podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, I'm cheering you on in your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time.